everyone, I'm Makayla, and with the next semester starting very soon, I thought it might be relevant to make a video full of tips and tricks to make your presentations better, or not necessarily presentations, but even just like speeches. Anytime that you're having to speak in front of a group of people with some sort of PowerPoint or slideshow. You might notice that there is no text in this video and there's also no music in the background. This is because my laptop is unfortunately in the repair shop right now. All of the editing is on my phone, which is why it's not quite as thorough as usual, but I'm going to be getting my laptop back soon, so yeah. But anyway, the point is, I do think that the advice I'm about to share, I think that if you follow it, it actually, there's a good chance that it could help boost your grade. But here we go. First off is creating off a good hook. Like with any essay you write, for example, you always want to have that first sentence that makes people want to listen. The same should be happening with your PowerPoint presentation. So when you put up your screen and you begin speaking, people are going to decide very quickly if what you're about to say is something they want to listen to or not. And a lot of that is going to be dependent on whether or not your very first sentence strikes a chord with them. And if it does, they're way more likely to listen. I think that most people know this one already, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. So the second one is to engage your audience. And by this I mean don't just read the entire time or don't just speak the entire time. I think a cliche one is people will start off by saying, okay, how many people here have, or by show of hands, how many people have, and even though it is cliche, it's still effective often. If you can, try to be more original and come up with ways you can get your audience to participate in the conversation with you without just doing one question of raise your hand at the very beginning and then doing nothing else throughout the rest of the presentation. If you're going to engage your audience, do it throughout the presentation, not just at the very beginning, not just at the very end. That's the best way that you can get people to listen to you. Keep your tone very conversational. It's good to have enriching vocabulary that pertains to the subject you're talking about, but you don't want to go over the heads of your audience. So I would just suggest keeping it in check and just speak to them like you would in any normal conversation. That is to say, I mean, this should apply to most presentations. If you have a teacher who really prefers it to be formal, then obviously make sure your presentation is formal. But in general, I think that you'll get a better grade if you sound very smooth, casual, like you know what you're talking about, not overly bombastic, but with just enough clarity for everyone to easily understand. Okay, I want to talk about text on your slides. A lot of people, I notice every single year of high school that I was in high school, is people would do presentations and they'd have a slide with like a huge paragraph of full sentences, and they would just read off those sentences. So everyone's sitting there and they're listening to the speaker read those sentences while reading them themselves. Never do this. If anything, either have bullet points of like phrases and words, or nothing at all even. You do not ever want any full sentences in your presentations. And the reason for this is it's just boring to the audience, and also the teacher isn't going to give you as good of a grade if you do this. It's just kind of universal presentation etiquette, I guess. Going off of that, what should go on your screen then, if you have to have very few words? Pictures, diagrams, graphs, anything that's remotely relevant to what you're talking about and people can look at, put it up there. The more, the better. So you're changing through slides more often, keeping people's attention. You don't want to be on the same slide for 5 minutes. You don't even, I would say like you want to be changing slides every 30 seconds to a minute. I mean, that's a very ambiguous thing to discuss, so maybe I won't go into that. But just make sure you're not staying on each slide for too long. Okay, so one of my biggest issues with presenting in high school was I would always rock on both my feet from back and forth. I would be rocking on my feet because I don't know, it was just like a nervous habit, I guess. And I notice I do it even when I'm recording my videos for YouTube. I rub my hands, but where I'm going with this is try not to do those things. You can obviously you want to use your hands when you talk to like grab people's attention, but you don't want to be fidgeting too much or else it's going to be distracting to what you're talking about. So just keep it balanced, I guess. I think a lot of people don't talk about this, but you want to include a lot of analogies and references in your presentation. Again, maybe not every presentation, like if your teacher doesn't like this, then obviously don't do it. If you throw in comparisons between what you're talking about and things that the audience knows about, it not only makes it easier to understand, but people are going to want to listen, because like if you say Star Wars or something in your presentation, everyone's going to be like, oh my gosh, I gotta listen to this. At least I would be like that. But as long as it fits the style of the presentation. Again, like I said, if it's a formal presentation, you wouldn't want to just be throwing around The Simpsons or something. But if it's supposed to be like a conversational presentation or a speech, then definitely throw in those references, because people are going to pay more attention if you do. Here's another thing I've always had an issue with: speaking pace. I always speak too quickly, especially when I'm nervous. So make sure you practice getting your pace down. But if you're presenting in front of a group of people, for a grade especially, make sure that you're speaking at a good pace for everyone to understand you. Also at a good volume. When the teacher has to ask you to speak up, I totally get it, because I'm not very outgoing, but just try to speak up from the beginning, because it's just going to give the teacher a better impression of your presentation. Okay, here's a huge one. Have confidence in what you're talking about. Kids who don't have confidence in what they're talking about, not only does it make them look unsure of themselves, but it's also just not as much fun to watch or listen to. People aren't going to pay attention to that. A huge thing I've also seen is people, when they present, sometimes they'll say like, oh, I forgot the exact date, but I believe he was born in 1962. Like they say a fact, but they make it clear that they're not sure if that's the right fact. Don't do that. Either check your facts before your presentation, or just say it with confidence and hope that it's correct, because if you show a little bit of uncertainty, it looks like you just don't know your topic as well. You never want to look like you're not confident. So just, and the audience will believe it too. So no matter what you say, as long as you say it confidently, chances are everyone's going to believe you. Okay, practice a lot. And the reason for this is the confidence one that I just said. Because if you're not practicing a lot, you are going to have a lot of unsure moments. Going off of practicing a lot, also time yourself when you practice, especially when it's a graded presentation that's like has to be 6 to 8 minutes, because if you go outside the 6 to 8 minutes, that is going to take away from your grade. So time yourself at least like 4 or 5 times before the actual presentation. At least that's what I like to do. You might want to do more or less, but always time yourself beforehand. Eye contact. This one's kind of funny because like you never really know where exactly to look during your presentation. I feel like it's kind of natural in the moment you'll know where to look, but just in case like you are worried about that, I always try. My dogs are barking, I'm sorry. I always try to like move my eyes a lot so that I'm making eye contact with people like occasionally, and then, you know, not lingering too long obviously, because that's just awkward. But I do try to make eye contact, especially with the teacher, at least several times. Slideshow transitions, in general, just don't do them. They distract from the topic and they just don't look very professional at all. I mean, if you really want to, go ahead, but just make them short at the very least. And then the conclusion of your presentation, again, you want to stay engaging the whole time and kind of leave them on a high note, like so that they're like, wow, that's a really good presentation, that's a really cool fact at the end, or this makes me want to go out and learn more about it. But also what's important at the end of the conclusion is to make sure that you have conveyed why your presentation is important. This does not mean you should directly say, my presentation is important for society because... Don't say it like that. Just make sure that you've woven into the conclusion somehow the significance of the subject that you're talking about, so that when people finish listening, they'll feel like there's a reason that they heard your presentation, and it all just makes sense and it all comes together. I think I gave these a little bit fast, and again, I'm really sorry there's no text on the screen. It's just the text options on iMovie on the phone are just, they just really annoy me for some reason. But I hope that you go into your next presentation feeling more confident because of this video. And thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a spectacular rest of your week.